Hello and welcome to the Coaching Crowd podcast with me, Zoe Hawkins, and my friend and co-host Joe Wheatley.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Today, we're talking about what is neurodivergent inclusive coaching. And it's really important to talk about this because so many of our clients are neurodivergent. You may be neurodivergent as a coach yourself, and in the coaching space, we're all committed to creating inclusive spaces, but we might all have different ideas as to what that means. So we want to help explore that and bring that to life for you today.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to acknowledge that when you're working as a coach, you will be working with clients who are neurodivergent. There are those who know they are, but there are also those who don't know that they're neurodivergent. And so it isn't really just about creating a space that is neuro-inclusive when you have a neurodivergent client. You need to create neurodivergent inclusive spaces, whether you niche in ADHD coaching or coaching people with autism. Like, you just need to have an inclusive space. And I think when you can create a neurodivergent inclusive space, your coaching is more inclusive in general. So it opens up safety for other populations because they will look at what you can do for one particular group and see the effort that you are going to, the flexibility that you have, the types of things that are available, and they will be able to see themselves in those spaces too. So when we created our neurodivergent inclusive coaching program, we had conversations around why start with neurodivergent inclusive spaces when actually there are other important topics as well, such as racial consciousness and those who are transgender. There are so many important populations of people, and one helps and supports another. So it's not to say that it's only neurodivergent spaces that are important, because they're all important. So it's about starting, isn't it, with inclusivity and creating inclusive spaces. So we're going to share some insights from the program, and also some ideas that hopefully we can inspire in you to create inclusive spaces, whether you're a coach or not, because many of these things you can do as a leader, as a line manager, as a peer, as a friend. They all have a place in relationship.
Yeah, so in the introductory lessons on our program, there are 4 lessons in that space. So as we talk about understanding and exploring what neurodivergent inclusive coaching is, I think first of all it's important to say that's your role as the coach, to find out and explore with your coachee what that would mean for them, because everybody is different and everybody has, of course, different and unique needs. And are you creating an environment and messaging from your website, your chemistry conversation, which is talking to that, showing an understanding of that, and showing a willingness to make reasonable adjustments that can enable your neurodivergent clients to be able to access and make the most of a coaching experience. So we break that down in the introductory modules so that we are defining what that is. And we're also looking at trauma and the role of trauma and how that can inform what's needed in order to create an inclusive space for our clients. We explore language and communication and how you can create the most inclusive space. So that's ranging from the words that we use to communication preferences, and developing understanding about those things too.
Well, you would have heard me when I was talking earlier talk about a person with autism. And actually, when it comes to language and communication, there is individual preferences around how people may want to be referred to. So many people in the neurodivergent communities don't want to be associated with somebody who carries something, because autism, for example, is an identity. It's a brain type. You either have it or you don't have it. So many people will be like, I am autistic, rather than I have autism. And to some people, the concept of having autism is quite offensive, because it's not like having a cold. I can't get rid of it. It's something, it's who I am. It's part of me, and it is an identity. It's part of my lived experience and my identity. And language is really important when we are working with clients on, as you said, Joe, even on your website, but then into your one-to-one. So if somebody comes to coaching and they may share that they are neurodivergent, it's really important to understand, how would you like me to refer to that if and when it comes up in the coaching space? So labels is a big debate within, was it a big debate? But it's really important within neurodivergence, because somebody may want, desire, love the fact that they have a label, because labels can help them to have their needs met, and it can help them to get reasonable adjustments and accessibility both in the workplace and in the coaching space. But others may reject the label for lots of reasons. It may be that they see, perhaps in the part of society that they're in, that their particular flavour of neurodivergence isn't understood or respected or welcomed. And so being autistic, ADHD, someone with dyslexia, dyspraxia, they may reject the label because they don't want to have that as like the only thing that they are seen as. So, neurodivergent inclusive coaching is really understanding the nuances that exist within the neurodivergent world, and being able to work with your client to understand what's their world. How can you enter their world rather than expecting your client to have to enter yours, which is often what the neurodivergent experience is. It's often about you as the neurodivergent person trying to fit with perhaps a society that's largely built for neurotypical, with neurotypical expectations. So I think that's a really important part of what neurodivergent inclusive coaching is.
Yeah, and the way we define it is that neurodivergent inclusive coaching is a strengths-based approach. And I think that's really important to orientate towards that. So we believe it's a strengths-based approach that embraces the unique ways that neurodivergent individuals experience the world. So creating an environment that's accessible, it's affirming, and that it is adaptable to meet every individual's needs. So it's honoring strengths, it's supporting challenges, and as a coach, we can help in our individual practice to challenge some of the systemic barriers that neurodivergent clients might have experienced in terms of accessing coaching that meets their needs. And so our aim in neurodivergent inclusive coaching is to empower individuals to thrive authentically. Neurodivergence as a term, it really is talking about individuals whose neurological functioning differs from what's considered to be typical. And there could be a lot of debate about that. So it's all related to societal norms. So we want to create coaching spaces where every individual feels that they belong. And we know that lots of individuals who are neurodivergent will come to coaching, and they may have had a lot of experiences where they've had negative experiences, perhaps in education, perhaps in the workplace. And depending on their route to accessing coaching, they may, of course, bring some fears about the dynamics that might occur or what is expected of them in that space. And we really want to be able to create and support individuals, coaches, to develop even more, to be able to create spaces where our neurodivergent clients don't feel the need to mask. And that unmasking and the environment that is required and the relationship that's required to create that may take some time. So even knowing about having some awareness around our neurodivergent clients' possible experiences of life can help us to be more informed about what needs may be, without making assumptions about what an individual's needs are.
You talked before around how in our program we have trauma-informed coaching awareness, and the reason why that's in there is because as a population, neurodivergent people have often experienced trauma. It could be what we describe as little t, but it can also be big T. And trauma is the response to an event or a situation, not necessarily the event that happens itself. And the reason why is because as somebody who's neurodivergent, growing up through the different systems, taking the education system as an example, where there has been a lack of understanding of behavior, you know, that can present as challenges that neurodivergent people have to navigate, and that can become internalized. And there's this term called internalized neuro-negativity. My autistic behaviors aren't welcome here. My dyslexic behaviors aren't welcome here. I can't be ADHD in this environment. You know, so, and when it's a part of who you are, if you're somebody who, you know, who you know, their neurodivergence is their identity, it's like saying, I don't like that part of you, so you can't bring that here. And so that does create these trauma responses. And so when you are working with clients who are neurodivergent, there is a possibility and a likelihood that trauma is going to come up in your coaching conversations, or trauma responses. And for those people who are neurodivergent, sometimes those emotions can be experienced quite fiercely. And so you may see an abreaction come into your coaching space more prominently, perhaps, than somebody who was neurotypical. And if you aren't informed and you aren't, you know, aware, that might take you as the coach as a surprise, like, oh, I didn't think that was going to be an area that was going to generate such an emotional reaction, but it did. And so it's important, I think, to just have awareness of what are some of the things that can occur within coaching sessions, and when they occur, how might you witness, handle, and validate that. And neurodivergent inclusive coaching is welcoming all parts of the person into the space, as it is in coaching in general. Like, it's not like that is anything new, because in coaching anybody, we welcome the whole person in. And if you're not used to working with neurodivergent clients, it's recognizing that those behaviors may show up differently. They may present differently, and differently can be brilliant and wonderful and great, and differently can also bring challenge. And so when we're informed, it helps us to respond to the client with the compassion and acceptance that they may really need in that coaching space.
I think when we talk about neurodiversity, if we, as a different word to neurodivergence, neurodiversity is about the full spectrum of human brain diversity. And then when we talk about coaching, the ICF say that understanding neurodiversity is essential to being an inclusive and an empathic coach. So our program is also about building awareness of different neurodivergent conditions. It's about building awareness of executive functioning. And the reasons for that are, for example, to be able to understand that your neurodivergent client might have particular sensory sensitivities that are heightened, more than a neurotypical person. So it might be, if you have that awareness that your neurodivergent client has got those sensory sensitivities, things like considering the lighting in your room. Let's say the room that you're in physically, or the space, but it could be you're engaging with your client, online. Just thinking about those things and asking your client, how's my lighting for you? And your client might say, oh, yes, fine. Like, those sort of things don't bother me. What bothers me is, and then or actually, like, it's a bit brash for me. Like, it's making me want to pull away from the screen. And so having that reaction means they can't fully engage and be present in exploring what they want to explore in coaching, because they're having a sensory overload or a strong sensory reaction to it. And if you don't know that, you wouldn't necessarily know to inquire about it. And your client might think, they may not even realize that that is having an impact for them, or they do, but they're masking and they're pretending that this is all fine, whilst half of internally they're having a whole different experience. So those subtle awarenesses are really important to be able to just offer the quick inquiry and check in with the client. How is that? And I think for a lot of neurodivergent clients, they would really appreciate that question because they can see it comes from a level of awareness that they might not have experienced in other environments that they've been in. So that's just a little example, but of course there are many, many more as you learn more and more about the different neurodivergent conditions.
Well, many coaches will ask, is it okay to ask my client if they're neurodivergent? And I think the simple answer is yes, yes, of course it's okay. You know, if somebody is neurodivergent and they have a diagnosis or they don't have a diagnosis, but they identify as autistic or ADHD, being asked, it gives them the decision of whether they choose to disclose it or not. Some people will and some people won't. And if they don't disclose it immediately, maybe they will later on. Same with the questions that Joe asked. It's actually not just your neurodivergent clients that you could ask those questions to. If you take stimming as an example, many neurodivergent clients will have particular stims that they have that might be rocking in their chair. It may be, hand movements or fidgeting. There may be clients who need to manage their energy and get up and walk around at different times. There may be some clients who really like eye contact, and there may be those that don't. And, if you took me as a typical client, like I will move eye contact away very frequently in conversations and relationships. And I don't have a diagnosis of being neurodivergent, but if I was asked about, anything you need, particular body language that you want me to be aware of, are there any energy management needs that you have, I would probably share with a coach, actually, I don't enjoy maintaining eye contact when I am reflecting or thinking or having deep conversations. It's a way for all clients to be able to express their needs, but particularly neurodivergent clients whose needs perhaps haven't been met in lots of different environments. It starts to show, oh, maybe I am more welcome here, or maybe this is safer for me. And that also comes with the expectation that you, as the coach, do not require your client to unmask straight away, because some clients will be deeply uncomfortable revealing their authentic self too quickly. They may take extra time than neurotypical clients to build trust and faith in you as the client. So I think there's this piece around what is neurodivergent inclusive coaching, which there are many similarities with normal coaching, and there are nuances. And those nuances are about the depth of the relationship, the time that things may take, the accommodations that may need to be met, the patience that you may need to exhibit, and managing your own triggers. So if we took communication as an example, there may be some neurodivergent clients who are very literal, quite, honest in their communication with you. And if you're not experienced with that or used to that, that may have an influence on what you think is happening in the relationship, when actually it may not mean anything at all. It may just be a communication pattern and a communication style. So educating yourself on different communication patterns, different needs that clients have, you're able to take yourself out of that coaching dynamic to an extent and be able to look down on it, to be able to observe with respect and with validation around what is actually happening in our relationship here.
And I think a summary of that is that as coaches, we're the ones to adapt rather than in the other environments that our clients might be in. They may have just felt like a relentless requirement for them to adapt and mask. And so how liberating it might be to be able to be in a space, a private space, a quiet space, where it's the coach that's doing the adapting and is checking out around that. And also part of what we can do is create a space where we can proactively share with our clients, like, nothing is too much in this space, because a lot of feedback that neurodivergent clients might have experienced in their life is like, you're too loud, you're moving around too much, you're too direct, you're just too something. And so even having like those kind of awarenesses, we can offer those adjustments and those encouragements and reassurances without the need for the individual to request them. And I mean, we're just still talking about what's in our introductory kind of content on our program. We haven't even talked about the other lesson in that introduction kind of phase of the program, which is around an introduction to polyvagal theory and also somatic. So the relationship that people have to their bodies, which can be more intense for some neurodivergent clients. And we explore the concept of the window of tolerance and all of those kind of things that need time, that need space and attention. And if you want to be able to explore that with other people and hear firsthand from those who are neurodivergent, because you will, there obviously are people on our program that are neurodivergent. You can learn firsthand from people about what that means for them and how the experience can be different when we take these proactive steps to create a neurodivergent inclusive space in our coaching spaces, rather than relying on, well, I am inclusive because I want to be.
There's naivety in that, I think, and I say that because I think I could have been that person at one point in time, which is like, I love all people, I've got great coaching skills, I deeply listen, I don't exclude anybody. And it's true, and it's naive because kindness isn't enough. You do need knowledge and you do need education and you do have to challenge your own unconscious bias about these things. And I think particularly if you're in an environment where you don't have experience of working with neurodivergent people and you don't have lived experience of what that is like for somebody, we both come from neurodivergent families and we see firsthand the different challenges that exist and the strengths, of course, but there are challenges. And expecting somebody to step into a coaching space and just be okay and just sort of follow and trust in the fact that your coaching is safe is naive, because most places haven't been wholly safe for them at all times. And there is a truth in that. And of course, there are obviously outliers and challenges to that. So, neurodivergent inclusive coaching, I think, is a willingness to learn, a willingness to listen, a willingness to be challenged about some of the biases that we all carry, including those who are ND themselves, right? Because it's an interesting dynamic on our programs. You have those who are neurodivergent themselves, and they come because they're inspired to help other people be neurodivergent. And then there are those who are coming because they're not neurodivergent and they really want to help those that are and do better in their coaching in general. And bias isn't about only for neurotypical people, because if you have a lived experience of being autistic, having ADHD, or whatever it may be, you may feel that your experience is the same as others. So you can have a bias about your own lived experience. So it's also about being able to look at, how do I, as a coach, influence the coaching space through the lens of neurodivergence, specifically in this program, but also just in what neurodivergent inclusive coaching is. So I think what we would say is, if you're a coach who wants to create inclusive spaces, it's almost a need to go and educate yourself, not a desire, but it's a need,
I think it's also an expression of love. It's an extending a hand out. It's being an ally. It's about supporting our coaching clients who may, part of what they might bring might be around like relationship dynamics. So it's a very feelings, for a lot of people, it's very feelings based. It's very, it's very driven. So this program is joyful. We've just completed the first program of it. The feedback has been amazing. We're also getting the feedback as to how complementary the neurodivergent inclusive coaching program is with our emotions coaching practitioner training. So it's really building that coherence really into your coaching practice, integrating this with your existing coaching approach and elevating your coaching. So I think most coaches are strengths-based coaches, and that's what this is. So if this feels like the right time for you and you're dedicated to, continuing to ensure that your coaching practice is inclusive, we'd love for you to join the program and the cohort, or to take the self-guided option for the program so that you can access it in your own time.
Yeah, and head over to our website, igcompany.co.uk/ND, to take a look at that webpage, learn more about the program, and access our resources there.